So Damien Leone's Terrifier has taken over the box office. It is up to almost $20 million opening weekend now. That is absolutely absurd to me. People cannot get enough of Art the Clown. Wild times we're living in that this independent horror movie has somehow dethroned Joker 2. I don't know how we got there, but I'm happy to see it. So I figured what better time than now to do my ranking of this series, all of the movies by Damien Leone that include Art the Clown because he's such a phenomenon at this point. And a lot of people don't know actually, he didn't start in the Terrifier series. He started with this movie called All Hallows Eve by Damien Leone as well. I'm going to include that one in my ranking if you're not familiar with it. Be warned, this video will probably include spoilers of some sort. I'm talking about all of these movies in depth and what I like and dislike about them, why I rank them this way. So be warned, you don't want any specifics. Go watch my other reviews first. Go watch the movies first. Do what you gotta do, but I'm going to talk about specifics in this video. My ranking, not yours. Comment down below. Let me know any of your thoughts on any of my thoughts. Let me know your rankings down below. Let me know if you like this franchise, you just don't like it in general, whatever. Just let me know all that stuff down below as we go. Let's get into it. This is my ranking for the Terrifier series and all of the movies, including our favorite clown, Art.
Please! The killer's out here! He's following me!
Who's following you?
So coming in at number 4, and no surprise to many, given that I just said a lot of people probably don't even know this movie exists, that is All Hallows Eve. But it's the first time we see Art the Clown. It's by Damien Leone as well. It's a horror anthology series, a lot different than the Terrifier series, because those movies have gotten a reputation now as being very B-horror, grindhouse, just incredibly gory. That's not really the case for All Hallows Eve, because this one takes place on Halloween night as well. It actually features the babysitter from Terrifier 1 that gets her face eaten off by Victoria at one point. But she's the main character of this. She's babysitting these kids, and they get this very mysterious tape dropped off at their door. They don't know what it is, and it's just a tape of an anthology series, basically. That's the route they tell the story from. You're watching this tape sent to them by Art the Clown of all these weird stories, and he's in it at one point. You get a pretty disgusting and gory sequence with him in this one when you're introduced to him. But it's just telling this anthology of all these different tales on Halloween night. You have one supernatural one, I believe. You have one that's kind of alien themed. So it's all over the place. It's a lot more traditionally horror than the Terrifier series when it comes to that extreme element. But I would go as far as to say that this movie might actually be, and I'm using air quotes, the scariest of all of Damien Leone's films. I've never found the Terrifier films whatsoever to be scary. They're just kind of funny B-horror schlock where you're watching this guy going around killing people. This movie tries to be scary in a traditional sense more so, where you have this family home alone at night. And they get this tape from Art the Clown, and the stuff on there is just very cryptic, and they don't know what's going on. And at one point, they think he's in their house. And then he is in their house at one point, and you're seeing him in their TV screen. Just the way they're introduced to Art the Clown is a lot more scary than just head on like the Terrifier films become. And I also think the sequence you actually meet Art in this when he's sitting down and this girl's reading a book is probably the scariest way he's ever been depicted when it comes to his introduction and his mannerisms. He's just sitting there silent, like a mime kind of. He's just very off-putting where he has this bag and he's trying to give her gifts, and it doesn't fully go there. As I said, this is again kind of a proof of concept, I think, by Damien Leone to get his ideas on screen. But it does have a couple of elements and setups. If you're pretty weak when it comes to horror, or you get scared easily, or suspense is a big thing for you, this one might be the scariest of these entries because it does kind of get sillier the longer the Terrifier series goes. So if you've never checked out All Hallows Eve, it's on basically every streaming platform. It's on Tubi, it's on Prime. It's by no means a fascinating movie or anything. I think it's fine for what it is. When I stumbled upon this thing years ago, before I even knew it became something bigger, I thought it was just fine. I've definitely seen way worse anthology series, but anthology series are always kind of hit or miss for me anyways. But this one's worth checking out if you just love the Terrifier series, you aren't familiar with it. All Hallows Eve comes in dead last. Coming in ahead of that at number 3 is actually the original Terrifier. And again, no surprise to anybody who's checked out my reviews. Now, I'll put a link to those at the end somewhere. You want to check out the whole series.
He saw us getting into it earlier.
Hey, handsome! Cut it out. My friend wants your number.
But I've always viewed Terrifier 1 to be a lot more of a proof of concept than an actual film, because really no plot to this one. You're just watching Art the Clown stalk and kill all these characters, all these women in this abandoned apartment building, and you really don't know why he's doing it, how they're going to get out, who these characters are. There's really no stakes to any of it. But it was awesome that we actually got him on screen and we saw it as a proof of concept of what he could be if he was written into a better story, or you had a bigger budget and you had a better atmosphere and you just had more set pieces he could work work with, because there's genuinely scary moments to this film and very unsettling elements. The gore is amped up a lot in this one compared to his first anthology series I just mentioned, All Hallows Eve. This is where, when I watched this for the first time, I really thought there was something there. Damien Leone was onto something, just not fully realized. Because the practical effects in this, the makeup design is really, really good, even for a low-budget film. I could be wrong, but I believe this movie was made for like $50,000 or something. It was really low budget. So for what he pulls off and what things look like and some of the practical effects, they're really good. I need to repeat that. So it's very gory, it's very depraved. I just like a little bit more meat on the bones to my horror films. I like there to be a plot, I like there to be characters, especially horror films, maybe a final girl. This movie really doesn't have any of that because you just don't care about these characters. It takes place in this one location. Again, because it's low budget, you do start to build on some of Art's mannerisms in this, some of his quirkiness. He does it at a couple points, but it still comes off a lot more brutal than the future films will be. I've always found the legacy of this film to be two things. The first thing is I just mentioned a couple of times already, Art the Clown, finally see him on the big screen. But the other legacy of this film is it has some absolutely disgusting kills. They're kind of cheesy looking back after you see number 2 and 3, how they're trying to make it more realistic. Number 1 has a couple of really demented kills, especially the hacksaw scene where he ties this girl upside down with a rope and just hacksaws her through the legs all the way down to the head, splits her right in half, and you see every second, every inch of this. So if you're queasy and you've been hearing a lot of buzz about the Terrifier franchise and you're just not sure if it's for you, and it sort of looks like it could be scary, but you're not a gore hound, and it's just got you worried, this is probably the film in this list you want to start off with, because if you can't stomach this one, tap out now because it gets more extreme as it goes. This film is a good litmus test of what type of horror fan you are and if you can stomach this franchise. So not a personal favorite of mine by any means, but I do think it has some strong elements, and it gave us art, which I'll forever be thankful for. Coming in at number 3, and my second favorite film in this franchise is actually the most recent film, Terrifier 3, the Christmas movie with Art. And this movie was marketed to be a Christmas movie, and it is, but it is still as brutal as ever. Probably the most brutal film in this franchise, as I said in my review. I thought number 2 was brutal. This movie's probably 10 times as brutal in my opinion, but they're just having a little bit more fun with it so you can stomach it. This film holds no punches. It goes places where no other film goes. It has kills affecting kids on screen. It has kills affecting kids off screen. The kills are incredibly creative, incredibly brutal, and you just get more of what makes Art so funny and kind of counterbalances how demented he is. More quirkiness, more jokes, having a blast meeting Santa and just doing these weird mannerisms, giving out presents to the kids, which the kids will probably regret taking from him. But all of that being said, I had a really good time with this one. This is not a movie I think a lot of people will be able to stomach, especially if you're not really into horror films, because it goes there, as I just said a couple of times. But what I really liked about this one is I'm a sucker for Christmas horror films. Got more art in that environment with Christmas lights. It really felt like Black Christmas. This movie pays a lot of homages with throwback scenes to The Shining, Halloween 2, Black Christmas. It's just having a lot of fun that extreme horror fans will notice a lot of references to. I also thought it does a good enough job at starting to build on the lore we were introduced to in number 2. We're handling Sienna again. She's overcoming survivor's guilt, PTSD, anxiety of what happened in number 2. You're starting to build on that. You get to meet her dad, understand the entity behind Art. You're getting a lot more lore that makes this film feel a lot more fleshed out than the other entries, which is kind of funny because I keep reading that this franchise has nothing but gore. It's just a gorehound franchise, which, as I always say, it kind of is to an extent. But I really think the lore, at least for me, is starting to carry this franchise. It feels a little bit like Saw, where I started going to see those movies after like Saw 3 and 4 because I wanted to see the plot twist. I really didn't care about the kills at that point. They were an afterthought. They just fit into the theme of the movie. That's kind of where I'm at with the Terrifier franchise. I'm so desensitized at this point. Number 3, absolutely wild kills in this. You have a scene where he cuts a guy's face in half with a box cutter, chainsaws 2 people in half, very graphic, goes even farther than that. You have some other extreme kills when it comes to an axe early in the movie. I could go on and name every kill in this movie. I could do a 20-minute spoiler review just how demented and fucked up they all are. This one's not for the queasy. As I said, check your fandom at the door. You can use the litmus test on this one as well. If you cannot make it through 1, you could barely make it through 2. Time to tap out when you get to 3 because it's getting pretty fucked up. That being said, the reason this is not my number 1 is there are some things I did not like about this. As I just said, this movie kind of feels like a tale of 2 films. The first half feels a little bit more like number 1. The second half of this film felt a little bit more like number 2. What I mean by that from a tonal standpoint is the first half of this movie felt really brutal for the sake of trying to one-up the rest of the franchise. For the second half of the movie, when it leans into Christmas and it gets a little bit more fun and Art's being more quirky, I was having a lot more fun with it. That's when I really started to love this film and see how weird it is and really building on the lore that we kind of didn't get in the first half. So for that reason, it's not my favorite, but that does not mean I did not really enjoy this movie. I had an absolute blast with it, and I think it's going to be a Christmas horror classic. I'm just somebody who personally likes that comedic element to art a little bit more than the pure brutality. So when they lean into that comic element and they can make me laugh like the second half, I really love it. For that reason, it's my second favorite, but that doesn't mean I didn't love it. But coming in at number 1, obviously, in a movie I don't think will ever be dethroned in this franchise, it will probably always be my favorite, even if they make 20 of these. It's Terrifier 2.
From Miles County, please welcome Art the Clown.
Now, I said in my review for this one, it took me way too long to watch this film. I was not fanatical about number 1. Number 2 is about 2.5 hours long. I just didn't know if this franchise was for me. But after watching number 2, it pissed me off how long it took me to watch it, because as I said in my review as well, I think this movie is Damien Leone's magnum opus. I don't think he will ever top this film. This is really the film that Damien Leone started to put the pieces together. Like, he figured out as a filmmaker how to take a proof of concept, a character, and really build him into a story, have some fun with it. And that's what he'll be remembered for. This is where he took the biggest step up. I don't think he'll ever take a step up as big as this, because in this one, it does everything the first film does, just 10 times as good in my opinion. It's bigger, it's bloodier, it's funnier, there's more lore. This is the movie that is absolutely perfect for Halloween time. It's one of my all-time favorite slashers. And this is not really the type of movie I would normally say that about, because it is really graphic, so the rewatch value is debatable to a lot of people, but it's having so much fun with world building, the spooky Halloween vibes, and building up Sienna as a character, and just some of the creative kills. I just could not get enough of this film. I was infatuated when I watched it. Felt like I was watching a 2.5 hour fever dream that did not feel like 2.5 hours at all to me. Some people have mentioned this film's runtime. This movie felt like it was barely an hour and a half to me. This movie flew by. I was so into it. You find out some backstory and lore about her dad in this one. You're introduced to this side demon called the Pale White Girl. And this is building on the fact of why Art's after her and what's going on and how she can overcome this problem in Miles County. And I just love everything about the way they wrote this character. She's very smart. She's very intuitive. She trusts her instinct, always trying to protect her family and Jonathan. She's not a dumb final girl. She's very rootable. Compared to number 3 as well, this movie takes place during Halloween time, and I do love a good Christmas horror film, but I'm also just a sucker for spooky vibes. So you have scenes taking place at a Halloween gift shop, and they're just having fun with a lot of the kills. The Clown Cafe, where they're singing that ridiculous song as he slaughters everybody. There's just so much fun they're having. They compared this film a little bit to Dream Warriors, Nightmare on Elm Street. That's kind of the vibe it gives off. It is incredibly extreme at points. The kills are graphic, but it is a lot more lighthearted in tone, like it's going for that dream element than the other movies. And that's just the tone of Terrifier I have the most fun with, when Art's just having a blast killing people and he's doing these weird antics. This is the most of that. So if you like that lighthearted tone to balance out that extreme gore, this one's probably also going to be your favorite. I also find the kills in number 2 to strike the perfect balance when it comes to creativity and absolute brutality. Definitely some infamous kills. People will always mention the bedroom scene. Hard to watch, but they're not as bad as number 3 in my opinion. Number 3 feels a lot more mean-spirited at a couple of points. So yeah, the bedroom scene, the gift shop scene, this movie's opening scene actually, there's a couple of scenes in this. If you're weak-stomached again, this is probably too much for you as a franchise, but it's still a better balance, I think, than number 3. And to finish it off, the final act of this film is one of my favorite final acts in a horror film ever. This thing is like 40 minutes long, taking place at this carnival, this ride called the Terrifier, and it is just the most full-on spooky vibes feeling thing ever. You're in this carnival, Art's chasing after Jonathan and Sienna, they're fighting back. It gets batshit crazy, it gets graphic, it gets gory, the kills are intense, there's some supernatural elements. You get to see Sienna covered in blood in her costume, Jonathan's fighting back. It just feels like the total blend of everything I want in the final act. Leaves you on a cliffhanger that if you're a fan of this franchise, you'll probably be going, what the fuck? But you also kind of want more, and you just want those answers from number 3 immediately. So yeah, this movie kind of just does it all for me. I think this movie is the most fun of this franchise. This movie has great vibes. This movie has an amazing final girl we introduced to. Absolutely awesome kills in this one, but they're not too extreme, if that's weird enough to say about this franchise. It takes place in a carnival. I'm a sucker for that as well. This movie just has everything I want in this franchise. That's why it's my number 1, and to be honest, I don't think it will ever be dethroned. So overall, guys, that's how I would rank this series. Comment down below. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything I said. Give me your personal rankings down below as well. As always, subscribe if you haven't already. Join me down below. I do it all on this channel. Rankings, new releases, scary stuff, all of it. Love to have you, but that's all I got in this video. Peace.